HBO's real-time host Bill Maher and his guests got into a hot debate last Friday and sparked a national dialogue about Islamophobia. Among other things, Maher called Islam's the only religion that acts like the mafia. He said someone could get killed for offending the faith. Actor and director Ben Affleck argued that those characterizations are gross and racist. He said only a tiny minority of radical jihadists are guilty of that behavior. Dr. Shaul Gabbay teaches about the Muslim world at the Corbell School of International Studies at the University of Denver, and he joins us from Denver, Colorado. Dr. Gabbay, welcome to Rise America. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
What we hope that we can accomplish with this conversation is to help those, particularly non-Muslims, understand the faith better so that we really can address this issue of Islamophobia, which is pervasive, not just in the U.S., but in many Western worlds. So this is my first question. If I were to say the basic tenets for all Christianity is that God created the world, he had a son that came to save the world, can you boil down the basic tenets of Islam in a similar way to help people understand the belief?
Well, Islam is a prophecy which comes from the Prophet Muhammad. The teachings come from the Quran, which is basically the word of God directly, which was revealed to Muhammad. And then we have a whole slew of the law and the canons which goes forward in terms of the understanding and the belief in one God and in the Prophet Muhammad. In fact, when you become a Muslim, what you need to do is to accept that there is one God and that the Prophet is Muhammad, which is different than the Judeo-Christian segment of belief.
And of course, with Christianity, there are many different practices, if you will, of the faith, where differing doctrines and interpretation of the Bible particularly. I imagine that same thing holds true with Muslims, as we see with sectarian strife in Muslim countries. Is there more of a conflict among different sects of the faith now than there has been before, or we just are noticing more?
It's absolutely both. One is we're noticing more. We have more of the coverage of what is happening instantaneously anywhere in the world, something that we didn't have maybe even 10 years ago to the extent that it is now. But also, when you look at Islam, when you study the teachings of the Prophet, it is very much open to interpretations and in some ways even internally contradicting itself. And that's why you can have someone who is extreme, such as Osama bin Laden, who interprets the most extreme ways of what the teaching says. And you also have them, which is the majority of moderates, who have also interpretations which are more about peace and coexistence. Both of them exist within Islam, and both of them could take from Islam to make their argument and point.
Why do you think there is so much misunderstanding, particularly in the Western world, as it relates to Islam? I mean, there's a very large Muslim population globally.
There are many misunderstanding and stigmatization. We have to remember there are estimated 1.6 billion Muslims. A very small minority has these extreme interpretations, and actually the majority of those who are hurt by these interpretations and these actions are Muslims themselves. I mean, look what is happening now in Syria, look what is happening in Iraq, and this is very unfortunate. Remember that even after September 11, this uneducated part in us, which doesn't even distinguish between a Sikh and a Muslim, went forward and hurt even Sikhs in New Jersey. So these points where we're not educated, when we stigmatize, when we look at the news and we see Boko Haram in Nigeria, we see what is happening in Iraq and other places, basically shape our ideas and our interpretations of who Muslims are. And we forget that the majority of Muslims are actually peace-seeking as anyone else, as Jews and Christians.
Let me just quickly ask you one more question, and I'm so glad that you brought up Boko Haram, who trying to impose Sharia law as well as the Islamic State, or they call themselves the Islamic State. Tell me a little bit about the rise of Sharia law and the role that it plays. Very briefly, this is a big old question, I know, and I'm all out of time.
Implemented, it's an excellent question. Sharia law is implemented in different parts in the world, even in some cases part of the constitution, such as in Pakistan, such as in Iran. It's basically a code of law. And this code of law includes the fact that murder is forbidden, and this is what we forget. But we do have terrorists who take this ideology, who can take from a context which is completely different, like the wars which happened in 1600 CE, and they implement it now in modern days, which is totally misinterpretation and actually working against the ideology and the religion and the belief in God. And that is the sad part of it, the tragic part of it, that these misinterpretations and the taking out of the context and forgetting that this is something that is good for 2,000 or 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, such a good conversation and an important one to have. We'll have to stop right there, unfortunately, though, Dr. Shaul Gabbay. Thank you so much.
Anytime.